Hi, everybody. Good to see you. I'm Gwendolyn Flynn, and I'm here with my colleague Tiffany Lee. And you are listening to New Answers podcast. We're a community of everyday people. Every time I hear that phrase, I think of Sly Stone, and we just lost Sly Stone. Anyway, we
Oh, we did. Everyday people.
people. I loved his stuff. I wasn't really into that. I mean, you know, I say I wasn't into the whatever they called it, punk funk, but I was into Sly Stone. All of his songs. So I'm so glad. I'm so saddened that he's no longer in this dimension any longer. But anyway, yes. So we are everyday people sharing solutions to life challenges based on our personal experience. And for the past few installations episodes, we have been talking about spirituality, and this is a nurturing spirituality sort of segment of New Answers because we think it spirituality for us is like getting a closer connection to uh, the divine invisible, the higher power, whatever you want to name it, and getting that closer connection can give us guidance into what it is we're supposed to be doing in our lives that will help us overcome any of these challenges that we might face. And we've been talking about a number of different things that help us to see how we are spiritual beings and how we are spiritually connected and how we can take that connection to make sure that we have that connection to, this higher power, to God, whatever you want to call it. So, and as I said, we've been talking about a number of different things. And today we want to talk about the question, and trying to remember how it came up. But anyway, the question is, does God make mistakes? And we want to talk about that today. From my point of view, I see, God, the invisible, what is it, omnipresent, that's out there in the universe. That's kind of the creator of all things. I don't see that God makes mistakes. I think God is, this divine energy that whatever it creates it on purpose and for a purpose. And so there isn't anything wrong with anything that God makes. That's the point of view that I come from. I don't know. How do you see it, Tiffany?
Okay. Well, first of all, we this came from the question came from the movie, that Catholic movie,
Oh, conclave.
Conclave. Yeah,
Right. That's right. That's right. I forgot about that.
when we talked about that. So, and without giving away the ending for anyone who hasn't seen it, the question, yeah, did it come from that or did we come up with that? But anyway, does he make mistakes? I'm gonna agree with you that no, like especially being a science of mind practitioner student and the way we see um, God is like the prime creator, or in one of the books it reads the back of all creation.
Mhm.
So there's no way to make a mistake. And in that, then you have to see like it's it's all perfect. Everything's perfect. Now, um, now once we get to our once the creation has come to humans, you know, because we have free will, we have the ego, you know, when we're in ego, that's called the mistake, you know, but the actual creation of us is not a mistake. It's we kind of co-create our life and the experience, not kind of, we co-create our life and the experience we're having. So um I chose to be, you know, a woman in this life and co-create everything, all my experiences. And it's easy to blame, it would be easy to blame like my mom or my dad or the neighbor on anything that goes wrong with my life, right? But becoming but as a student of spirituality, you learn that you are the co-creator. So whatever's happens, has happened, is happening in my life, I've created. I've co-created that, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
Yes. And we co-created, and maybe in that, well, what I'm trying to get to is what may appear to be things that are going against us or bad, um, that occurs. And it could be a co-creation. It could be that these things are happening. Like I said, there's a reason, there's a purpose behind it. And I tend to think, and this is coming from I have kind of I'm an informal student. Like I'm not enrolled in any classes or anything, but just as a uh, not practitioner, I'm not a practitioner at all. A parishioner is what I was trying to say of spirituality through the center that I go to, Agape. It's like things that appear to be bad happening or mistakes or whatever are happening because we are supposed to learn from it. We are supposed to grow from it. So the purpose of it is to contribute to our continuous development as a co-creator in this human incarnation that we're in. That
right.
is like, so it appears to be an obstacle. It appears to be a challenge. It appears to be a, you know, something negative in our lives, but it gives us an opportunity. Like that's an area of our life that we are supposed to grow in. We're supposed to learn something from that and grow and become a better emanation of the divine invisible. Preach, Gwen.
Preach, Gwen. Yeah. So our soul, everything's a perspective. You know, at any point in your life when things seem to be not going well, you can see it as not going well because you might have had a plan for yourself, you know?
Yep.
But then if you change the perspective and if you say it as this is a lesson,
Yes.
then it changes everything. It changes the way you think about it. It changes, and honestly, you get through it faster once you do that because once you go, okay, this is an actual lesson and this too shall pass. Um, the sooner you say it as a lesson, the sooner it passes. And then you appreciate it. And then after a while, I know from my experience, I, um, after a while, you just begin to just really appreciate the hard times. And I hate to say that, and I'm not asking for more universe right now, but you can't appreciate it. You can't, when, the time has passed and you're like, wow, I really grew from that. And now there's a whole other element to me that I love. And the whole point is to love ourselves, to expand our soul and to grow in self-love. And self-love is just such a tricky, a tricky thing because it's not about confidence. Self-love is not just like, oh, I look in the mirror and I love the way I look, or you know what I mean? Self-love is really, you have to get to know thyself in order to love thyself. And knowing thyself is knowing and understanding that you're divine.
Yes.
We're part of the divine, right?
Absolutely.
And with that, um, we know we have masculine, we have men, we have women, right? And I guess some questions come out. What about people born differently with disabilities or um disabilities or just different like oh gosh, I'm spacing on the title of someone that doesn't claim male or female.
Like I was going to say, it's not by, but
But we're both on the same wavelength. We know what we're talking about. And I can't remember that either. Like what? Or even okay, someone that is is gay or lesbian or whatever. Like so those are the big that's like the political thing, right? Like God doesn't make mistakes. You're a woman and da da da. Well, yeah, God doesn't make mistakes. Who says that
Right.
he didn't create that person exactly like that for his the reason or for that person's reason for that soul lesson. If you're going to believe God doesn't make mistakes, then that person's not a mistake either. Not a mistake.
Yeah, exactly. So kind of in alignment with what you're saying is what comes to mind is, the expression, um, we as human beings have a plan about our life and about, who we are. But and that plan comes out of our own sort of our ego, isn't it? It's related to the ego, that edging God out, ego, right?
Right.
But God, and it's about changing your perspective. So it's not your plan. You know, God has, God looks at your plan and kind of laughs. But
Last.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, so, and I'm saying that because that's sort of a common expression that people will use when
Mhm.
something happens in their lives, and it becomes a disappointment to them because they had this plan, and so yeah, God had a plan, and he looked at you and laughed. So that, and I keep going back and forth because I usually don't talk about God in the sense that it is a being that's looking down on our lives necessarily. It's just a presence, right?
Right.
Um, but you talked about changing the perspective. When we change our perspective and recognize that that plan was coming out of our ego and look at it in the way God, the divine spirit, looks at it, as here's an opportunity for you to elevate another dimension of yourself, because this is something for you to, as I keep saying, grow through, right? Then it changes the whole situation, about your whatever it is that you're going through. It changes that whole perspective, and
Yeah.
kind of embrace. Maybe if you get to that point, sometimes it takes a minute to get to that point of seeing it in a way that you're supposed to grow through this and it's going to pass. It's very hard to do that because our ego is there, right? Ego is there kind of resisting that. But once you do that and you kind of, as we were saying in earlier conversations, kind of release it, right? And surrender, right?
Under. Yeah.
That idea of you going through this so that there's an opportunity for you to grow, then you feel better, right? You can
Hmm.
take a breath, you can breathe, and you say, okay, so this is temporary. There's a lesson in here for me. I
Yeah.
learn that lesson. And then if you don't learn that lesson, it'll repeat. It will repeat. Whatever it is that challenge is will come back. It may,
Right.
won't it? Has that been that's been my experience. If you don't learn that lesson, I probably shouldn't go in this direction, but I will. And a prime example of that for me is relationships. If I don't learn from some sort of experience that I had with a relationship, it will, and it doesn't have to be a romantic relationship, it's any relationship, then it will repeat, maybe not with the same person, but in another relationship type situation. And so,
Will.
you know what I mean? You want it?
It will because we're creating with our minds.
Mhm.
And so we have our conscious and our subconscious, and the subconscious is influenced by the conscious, but we act out of the subconscious. So if we don't change what's in our subconscious for the action, then we're going to still attract and we're still going to do the same thing. And that's why it repeats. And that's why we have to learn and embody whatever the learning lesson is. Because once we embody it, then we'll do something different. Then we are actually different. every breath, there's a quote, every breath, in the process of every breath is a death and a rebirth. So think about how beautiful that is, because you can just be like, ooh, I didn't like who I was 5 minutes ago. I'm going to breathe and change myself. You can make that a conscious thing. And the universe is in constant change. It's constantly creating. And that's what the beautiful part of taking, sitting back, meditating, concentrating on your breath, having your death and rebirths to change your life. You know, you can come out of a meditation and be like, I see things a whole different way. I think things a whole different way, and your life will change right then and there. You'll be on the progress of that change,
Yes.
that timeline, that new timeline.
Yes. Yes.
And isn't that like once I started thinking like that, it's such a blessing because now I can think like, oh, I don't like the way things are. Okay, I created that. The universe, everything around me is in flow. When you align with God, everything's changing constantly. Let me align up
Yes.
and decide, work with the universe where my life is going to go from here, you know?
Yes. Yes, exactly. That's what I was going to say about how once that mindset is changed,
Hmm.
that the universe will align with that changed mindset. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
That you will, and you'll know that because things start to flow. Things
Hmm.
become easy, and whatever resources you need, whatever people you need will start to just come into your life.
Will flow in.
And then it becomes easy. But it's easy to talk like this, but to actually, because we have these, our individual minds, and can make decisions, and the ego stuff gets in the way. That's what makes it hard. It's like setting that aside, setting that ego aside, and
Yeah.
surrendering to um, surrendering to the universe,
Yeah.
and picking up that flow. Now, so going back to folks who are born differently abled, um, and what, in how that could be seen as a mistake, but there's a purpose for that, I think. And I don't know what that purpose is, because but for people to be born in that way, so that are otherly able, dis,
I like that you said that, otherly abled or differently abled, as opposed to when I said disabled. Because as soon as with the concept of what we're talking about, when I said disabled, I was like, that does not feel right. So I like how you said otherly abled.
so I have a nephew. He's my, yeah, he's my nephew, right? My niece's son, who was born without hands and feet. And so he's got to learn how to navigate in a different way than we are. I think when I first met him and he was learning to speak, he introduced himself and said that his hands were broken. And that's how he was seeing himself at that time. And
Hmm.
I can't remember what I said to him, but I was trying to not buy into that, you know,
Hmm.
to say you have, you have a different, I don't know what I said, but I was trying to make him feel better, because the way he said it to me, the way he introduced himself, it sounded negative to me, like he was seeing himself in a negative way, like my hands are broken. And I thought, oh, my baby, I don't want him to see himself in that way. And I don't know what I said, but I tried to turn it around. Um,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to learn to navigate, and he's learning. I think he's in the second grade now. Um,
Oh, wow.
right, and how just everything, with what he has. And so when you look at individuals like that, what is that a mistake that God made? I don't think so. I think he has a purpose. And like all of us, we got to figure out what that purpose is.
Right,
And maybe it's one of the his reason for being here is to show the others of us, um, I don't know, that we're supposed to learn something from him being here in that way. You know,
right,
that we are able to overcome whatever it is that is put upon us. I don't know. There's something that we're supposed to learn from that.
right.
In
It's
addition,
interesting because there's a lot of um, beliefs out there that says we choose our experiences, right?
yeah,
So if from his standpoint, he chose this experience to come as an other abled, and then it's going to be his journey to awaken
yes,
to know his self, his inner self, his soul, and that's when he'll, discover his purpose. It's during that awakening phase. And younger people come in more awakened with less of a veil than we did. That's because of just where we are with the earth ascension. So it'd be interesting to see how he awakens, develops, and what he does with his gifts. Um, there is, Nick Valvacek. Have you heard of him?
no, I'm gonna
Let me
write.
make sure I said that name right. It's Nick Valvacek. I don't know if he's a pastor, but he's always a guest at churches. I remember meeting him years ago,
Uh-huh.
and he has really, I'm looking him up real quick.
Okay. So it's a matter of finding, like we were saying, like what their purpose is and what their gifts are. So they may not have the physical um, character, whatever the just attributes of of most of us, but they probably have some other gifts and talents. Obviously, they have gifts and talents that we don't, because each of
Right,
own individual gifts and talents that we're supposed to get, but their gifts and talents may be more amplified, that are intangible. You know what I mean? That somehow you say that he's now a minister, so he's got the gifts of oration. Anyway, he's being able to speak to people, and
hmm
um, and
he does so much. He's very inspiring because he does everything. He's even married and had kids, and he swims, and they just showed him. He talks about his journey as a child learning to do everything, and he wanted to be able to do everything
yeah,
with no arms and legs, and he gets around, and I mean, he learned to do it, and he's so in love with Jesus. He's like so in love with Jesus, and that's why he goes around and speaks, and he sees his situation as a blessing. And
yeah,
like you meet him and you fall in love with his soul and his spirit because it's so magnetic.
yeah.
And I really want to, I got to figure out the last name. I'll do it after the show and share it with you because it would be really inspiring, I think, for your nephew.
Okay, yeah, I'd love that. I would love that because I could definitely share it with him.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he's an example, of how, being without arms or legs or whatever,
Hmm.
and you can go about your life. But
Right.
but the gifts that he have are just different and probably more amplified than what the rest of us have.
Hmm.
And that's what he shares with the world. And now he's in a position to be able to share that with the world and be such an inspiration. So, so it's finding their purpose, right? It's finding what their purpose is. Everybody's here for something, and everybody has a different set of tools, or what I call superpowers. That's what I tell my grandchildren. You got to find out what your superpower is, and usually your
Yeah.
power is what you're good at and what you like, and that will become your, what gift you're to give to the world.
Right.
And to me, those gifts are supposed to be what really uplifts humanity, which is why we're supposed to share them. And the sin, I think, is not sharing them. I think that's what sin is. Um,
money. And one of them doubled it, one of them made a little bit more, and the other one, or one lost it, and then the other one didn't do anything with it. They just buried it because he didn't want to lose it. So when God came back, they'd be like, okay, what'd you do with your talents?
mhm.
And one person's like, I doubled mine. The other person's like, I lost mine. And I could be butchering the story. But the point of the story is the one that buried it was like, God, I didn't lose it. It's all still here. I didn't use it. I buried it. And then he was like, I didn't give it to you to bury. So I'm taking all of yours away.
Ah,
Because even if you lose it, it was like money, but even if you lose it, at least you tried, you
try.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
hmm hmm No, I didn't. I hadn't heard that story before. And that's the other thing. I didn't, I'm not a student of the Bible.
Right.
I haven't read the Bible and know those stories. That's why I say, in terms of our development, I'm behind you in terms of that, because I'm not as familiar with the Bible as as a lot of people are, and as certainly as you are. But yeah, I could see how, yeah, if you don't use your talents and gifts that were given to you, you lose it. Yeah.
Yeah. I did have to pray a couple years ago. I said, I know I've put aside some of my gifts, but I'm ready to receive them back, you know? So, especially like my psychic gifts, I
Mhm.
put them aside because I didn't feel that my ego maturity was in a good place to have the gifts because all gifts can be used for good or bad.
That's
And and as we discussed, my belief is like when you're in the ego, the further in the ego is the further when you can be in the mistake or into evil. I
yeah.
mean, evil even, or hurting people. And it's just not, and I recognized that years ago at a young age, like college. And so I asked for my gifts to be taken away.
Oh,
I don't trust myself with it because I was mad at someone. I was like, "Mm."
oh,
So, because the tongue is a spell. Everything you say is a spell, you know? Um, and I was aware enough to see that if I did think bad of someone or say something that there would be an effect. I've always been aware of the fact. It's everyone has it. Jesus talks about it. Um, but whether we're aware of it or not, and a lot of it's intent. And I was aware enough to have intent in everything I do. So therefore, I was like, take it away because I'm not mature enough to handle the gifts. But I
oh,
did recently pray, like when I felt I was ready to, I
yeah.
prayed for my gifts back. But I will tell you that I recently got challenged again. You know what I mean? But so you want to kind of curse someone sometimes when you're just like when you're challenged, but I also know like that backlash, like there's karma that comes with everything you do. So
Yes.
and and to intentionally do something to hurt someone, I'm not in that part of my ego anymore. Whereas like I can't just do that. Yeah.
But to be able, I have never been that self-aware. I still am working on that, and I don't know what in my early life. Well, I have a clue, I guess, what has happened in my early life that would cause me to suppress or diminish that ability to be so self-aware. But you, at an early age, had such self-awareness, to be able to recognize certain things and be able to sort of manage it. I never had that either. I think as I get older, I am becoming more self-aware. I'm taking a breath before I say things anymore, because I used to say some. As I look back on some of the stuff that I said and even did, it was wild. It was like,
No, we've all had those.
why would you do that? That was that was not, that was so hurtful. Now
Yeah.
it's so not as non-agape like, It's like, but anyway, it's about self-awareness, and I'm just
Yeah. And
really,
it's with wisdom, and wisdom comes with age. It really does. That saying is, I wish I had the wisdom I have now 30 years ago in my 20-year-old body.
But somehow I don't think we're supposed to. I don't think,
We're not supposed to because we wouldn't really experience everything that our soul needs to experience in this lifetime if we did. If we came in with all the wisdom that we needed,
mhm.
then the experience wouldn't have been as learning, I suppose,
I
you
think,
know.
I think, and it wouldn't have been as meaningful. It really, really wouldn't. We wouldn't have understood it really. So I think you're right about that. So there are several things that you said that I want to follow up on, and maybe these are different shows. One
Okay.
is, and that maybe they're interrelated too, karma. Because I think we probably mentioned that in our previous recording. Uh, but we need to talk about that karma. And related to that is you talk about, like what you say, what you put out into the universe, which is, as I say, related to karma. It comes back to you. It really does come back. So, and it's about the alignment, I think, with maybe not alignment, but certainly if you put even negativity, if you put any negative stuff out there, uh, in what you say, in what you think,
Hmm.
you're going to find it and it's going to show up. It's going to show.
It's and that's why nowadays when people say that they're master manifestors or the best at manifesting, I'm like, no, everyone is because we're manifesting 24/7 all the time.
All.
Now, intentionally manifesting what you consciously want is the gift because yes, everything we say, we're manifesting. Everything we say, we think. We don't even have to say it. Um, when you say it, it's more effective actually, but we're manifesting. So and that's why when you look at your life, you go, I created this. And
Yes.
that beauty in it and beauty in understanding that is knowing that, okay, now I can recreate. I'm creating constantly, so let me decide what I want to create. And
Yeah.
that's where we watch, even the Bible says, be careful what you speak,
Yeah.
because that's what you will be, and that is very true. So whether it be you speak of being a millionaire or if you speak of being poor and broke on the street, whatever resonates with your subconscious, with your soul, not necessarily your soul, but in the mind, your subconscious, whatever you truly believe is what's going to happen. And that's why manifestors, what they do, coaches,
Mm.
their goal is to get you to change. I like to say here that subconscious, I have no idea where in the brain that is, but I'm like, to me, it's like the back, um, to change that so you can manifest the life you want.
Yeah. So I think this could be another conversation because now I'm
The
thinking,
karma, yeah, is definitely another conversation, but it comes. But what came to my mind right now is why I said you have to be careful. Like when I said I'm not mature enough to have the gifts because I don't want the karma. If I get mad at someone and like inadvertently curse them, and with me knowing that I have certain gifts, so I know it can be an intentional curse, but
yeah,
that's going to come back at you. Everything you put out there comes back at you tenfold.
yeah, it does. It does. And so here's the other question, kind of related to that, is that I'd like to get into when we talk about, and devote a whole segment to karma, is if the universe. So where does where is the reconciliation of the words we put out there, especially if they're negative, and aligning with the universe? Maybe I'm answering my question as I ask it. Um, if you put something out there, it will come back to you, negative or positive.
Mhm.
Where is it? How is it that you put it out there and align it with the universe so that it is positive, so that there is growth out of it, so that there is, the elevation of you as a human, as a person as a human having a spiritual experience, or whatever the word, whatever the expression is. You know what I mean? What is it? how is it that you, because I guess I'm getting into this notion of karma and curses and, you know, the things that you say and think manifest. So all of that is obviously interrelated, and I'm trying to figure out how is
I,
it, you know what I mean? What, you know what I'm trying to say here?
I'm feeling you. I'm picking up what you're trying to put out. And I do think that's a whole other show. But briefly, um, your karma is not all bad, by the way. It's just basically what comes back to you, what you need to learn or whatnot. Um, when you put something out there, it's your intention. In order to change things or what you want as the good is the intention of what you're saying, what you're putting out there. So you can,
That's the big.
most of the time, we're just going through life. We're just doing what we're just talking. We're just hanging out. We're just when we're not conscious. Okay, this, yes, when we're not conscious of our actions, our words, our thoughts, then we're doing everything under the unconscious part of us. And unconscious has a tendency to lean towards the ego. So, and that's what we're creating from. And all that came from our upbringing, the people around us, all the stuff that we allowed to come in. And that's why you're supposed to even like protect your environment, what you watch on TV, who you're around. It's, they say that you are an example of the five people that you're around, the most. So, because all of that influences you, even if you're not conscious of it, you're not conscious of how much it influences you and your thoughts and stuff like that. So that's why you change your environment, you change your thinking, you change your life, right? That's Ernest Holmes is the original one that said it, and we go to the Science of Mind, church, and that's what that's all about. In one of the books that he says, um, and that thinking really is the subconscious, but the conscious has to bring in the influence to the subconscious. Your intentions, the power of your intentions are going to come from your subconscious. Because you can say, I want $1 million, but if your subconscious says, and that would never happen to you, then that's not going to happen to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Now, if you can, so with our church, when we do spiritual mind treatment, the goal is to align. If you called in a coach for a spiritual mind treatment, or if you did yourself, the goal is to first align with source to the point of like what we know and believe. And that way it aligns with our conscious and our subconscious. So we both know and believe that source is the ultimate power. And
Yeah.
that's why that's the first step in the spiritual mind treatment. Source is the ultimate power, the prime creator, perfect, and all almighty, all powerful, omnipresent, however you relate to it.
Yeah.
Because even you and I relate to it a little bit different, and that's okay. Um, and then how you relate to source. So the first step is acknowledging who source is. For me, prime creator, I see it, I'm a visual, so I see a big light, like this is creation, like almost the sun. And then I align to it being like, I'm a ray of that light.
Mm.
Part of the creator, I'm a ray of that light. And I'm here creating with source. And if I stay aligned with source that I'm creating, I'm going to create a more abundant life, a more aligned life with whatever my experience is supposed to be here. When I step outside of that alignment, I'm still creating. You're always creating, but I'm creating from the ego.
Ego.
And that ego is highly influenced by everything around me,
Wow.
as opposed to just with source.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. I still think it's worth another conversation, to do this, to talk about, where we are right now with this, and then even go further. But this has been fascinating. So, for those of you who are listening to us, and if you have resonated with anything that we said today, we were primarily talking about answering the question, does God make mistakes? And then we kind of moved off into some other areas that we're going to explore even more in future episodes. But if any of what you heard uh, on this video today resonates with you, tell us about it. Write it in the comments section below here, and tell us what your experience is, and what you think is the answer to that question. Do you agree with us that God does not make mistakes, or do you agree that, or do you think that um, that God does make mistakes, and you've got examples of it? We'd like to hear that. We'd like to hear from you, and also subscribe to us, because those of you who subscribe, each time we upload a new installment of this conversation, you will be notified about that, and you'll know ahead of time for those who don't subscribe. So this has been fascinating. I'm always enjoying the conversation. I always learn something new as we're both going through this odyssey of um, nurturing our spirituality. And I am grateful that you are willing to continue this odyssey with me. And hopefully, we're opening other folks up to this.
Yeah.
You're getting from us the fact that the connection that we have to our higher power does give us guidance in how we are to act on our own behalf, but also how we interact with each other. And I am hoping that this will open us to a point where there are many more of us who are interested in making that connection with our higher power, not only so that we can overcome any challenges that we're facing in our personal life, but that we can grow this community to a point where we can have some influence over what's going on in the larger world. And there's a lot of change happening, and changes that are uncomfortable and that are disruptive. And if we can, and it seems very dark to me right now, and if we can bring light to a lot of what's happening now, and make some changes to the world itself, I think we'd be better off, and we will be contributing to the creation of that beloved community that Dr. Martin Luther King talked about.
Mm.
With that, we are going to say goodbye, and until next time, I'm Gwendolyn Flynn,
I'm Tiffany Lee.
and we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us this time, and we hope to see you